So I'm Gemma Parker, I work for EY. I work in the candidate engagement team. So essentially my job is to nurture and engage candidates through talent pools and communities, and ultimately work on strategic workforce planning to ensure that we have talent for the future. So I'm here today to talk why can't we do candidate experience? And there's loads of reasons why we maybe can't do it that well. It could be we don't have the budget, we don't have a brand team, we don't have the social media presence. And the one that comes up most of all is we don't have the technology. It's really easy when you're kind of in the candidate engagement and experience space to look at other people and think, they're doing amazing things, why can't we do that? You look at their social media profiles, they've got employee advocates coming out their ears, they have a great presence on social, and ultimately you're thinking, well, why can't we have that as well? Be safe in the fact that actually that is not possible for everyone. If you work for a smaller company, lucky you, you can kind of run free, enjoy all of the aspects of being creative on social. You're not going to be as bound by a lot of the things that happen, like in larger organisations. Be bold, be creative. If you work for a larger organisation, like I do, it should be a gift, but don't worry about it. Essentially, you're bound by employer brands. So, brand police are everywhere. Very strict. We've got a brand palette, we've got copy, we have a particular message that we want to put out to out to candidates, And ultimately, we cannot, it depends on the company you work for, you can't make those changes straight away. In the good old days of recruitment, not quite like Rolodex and fax machine, but we had a phone and we had a computer. We didn't really harness things like email campaigns, text, anything like that. It was a simpler time. And yes, I have used one of those computers, but when I don't want to go back to that period of time, we are just in the age of the informed candidate, and things have evolved and changed, and ultimately candidates are not doing as much kind of research now as they are on your company websites. They're more likely to be all over your social channels. So before they click apply, they stop and they're like, oh, exciting, company identified, let the investigations begin. They're going to be all over everything that you've got. 64% of candidates do research into a company before they click apply. You've got your standard social media platforms. I think I've said to a few people, I don't have TikTok, but obviously everyone's all over TikTok. And then you've got things like Reddit, Fishbowl, Glassdoor. These are systems that you can't really control. These are kind of opinion-based forums. And again, that can be quite disheartening when you're trying to build a really good candidate experience and you can't because people are kind of potentially bad-mouthing you. But what I want to talk about today is the things that you can do that actually over time will filter into these forums that you can't really control. A 5-star candidate experience is not pre-application. That's not what makes it. You could have an exceptional presence externally, but if the candidate comes and falls off a cliff when they land in your process, then ultimately, was it worthwhile having all that great marketing out there? I suppose the difference between kind of like a pre-application and post-application candidate experience has a bridge in between it, and that is the job advert. And as much as I would love to talk about job adverts all day, because I get really frustrated by them, that is the chance for a candidate to see into your organisation. So that is a key candidate experience point. They want to sneak peek, they want to see what's behind the kind of face of the organisation, and they also want to make sure that, it's an engaging kind of, explanation of what they can get into, what's the impact, what are the team like? So we talk a lot at EY about going beyond the job description. So, you can copy and paste a JD and put it on your website, but what about going beyond it and giving the candidate something that they can really work with? This, by the way, is Simi, who's sitting just over there. People in the business reach out to Simi to rewrite job adverts for them all the time to make them more engaging, so please feel free to connect with her. She's the job writing Jedi at EY. I was actually at a conference here last year and Neil from TribePad spoke, hi Neil, and he spoke about mapping the candidate experience journey, not the candidate process. And I was like, that is an absolutely brilliant idea. And we went away and we were like, right, we're going to do that. So you've got your end-to-end from application to onboarding, but actually how does the candidate feel when they hit each of these touch points? They hit apply, how do they feel? They get a first stage interview, how are they feeling about that? They're going to onboard, how are they feeling? And I'm very on the touchy-feely side, like that's what I'm all about when it comes to candidate engagement. But that was super important for us to take that step back and go, yeah, this is actually really important that we show candidates that we care throughout the process, and they'll be able to feel that, and it'll make them more motivated to do well. I had a meeting in Glasgow last week with someone who'd just come into the candidate engagement space, and she works for a kind of small consultancy, and she said, I don't know where to start with candidate experience because the business want X, I want to do Y, I want to show that I can make an impact, where am I going to start? And I was kind of reminded of the fact that it's actually really overwhelming to try and start a candidate experience strategy from scratch. And even if you've got, good things going on, how do you build on it? So I kind of want to talk through 4 simple steps. I think they are fairly simple, that hopefully people can take away and will find helpful. The first one is communicating certainty. And I know that we're in an industry where there's loads of variables. You've got hiring managers who are ghosting you, you're waiting on CV feedback, you don't know when the interviews are going to happen. It can be really difficult to time-bound that process. But ultimately, a candidate clicks apply and loses control immediately. And I am a self-confessed control enthusiast, so I don't like it when that happens. Not that I'm looking for jobs, just as an FYI to my boss. They click apply, they go into the ether that is your ATS, your CRM, and then they're just waiting to hear from you. You might get an application acknowledgement, but you might not. And then what's the expectation there? Is the candidate going to hear in a day, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months? Never. It's really important that we communicate the things that we can control to candidates as early on in the process. What is an absolute fixed point is your recruitment process. You don't ever get a hiring manager coming to you and saying, I think for this candidate, we're going to do an interview. And we all go, oh, no, an interview, you're absolutely kidding. They're going to do one. No, absolutely not. We know if someone works in this particular area, they're going to get a pre-screen, they're going to do an interview, 2 interviews, 3 interviews. Is there going to be a presentation? Is there potentially going to be any kind of testing involved? And then what would be the process from start to finish? This is where you can give candidates certainty. You don't time bound it and say, this is what we're going to do in the next 3 days, but you say to them, this is what you can expect from us moving forward. And it doesn't matter where they land in the process. They're going to thank you for sharing that information and for giving them the heads up. In order to actually kind of communicate these certainties, you have to have collateral or content. And it's really important to be as creative as you can be. So if someone does receive an application acknowledgement, maybe you want to outline the process to them. You can do that on Word, you can do it PDF, you can do an infographic, you can do a video. But ultimately, if you create something that they can take away and read over, then you're helping keep them informed. At interview stages, this is something that we do at EY. So we've got interview prep guides for all stages of the interview. If they're interviewing for different job families, then each of those is bespoke to that job family. So what we're saying is, you can expect that you're going to get an introduction, we're going to tell you a bit about the company, we're going to go into a competency-based interview. By the way, these are some of the competency-based questions that you might be asked. Not that you will, but that you might be. And this is what you can expect generally in terms of feedback at the end of the interview. And again, this is something that candidates find really helpful because recruiters, we want candidates to be successful at interview, absolutely. Why would we ever send someone forward for an interview and think that we don't want them to do well? This motivates them to prep more. So you're taking some of the onus off the recruiter in prepping and you're giving it back to the candidate so they can take control. And then at the onboarding stage, this is so important. Like, this is the limbo land for candidates. They basically go from accepting a job offer, they're leaving their previous employer, everything's a bit stressful. For international relocators, you can triple the stress levels here. It's obviously a lot of change and it's a big life decision. Onboarding guides are really helpful for candidates. So we say, this is how many references we're going to need to take. We also run right to work checks. We might do a financial check on you. If you're relocating, we're going to need you to get a visa. And by the way, the visa process is lengthy, and this is all the information you're going to need. And most importantly, these are your key escalation points, because as recruiters, we're dealing with lots and lots of queries from candidates all the time. But actually, is it their job to be dealing with those queries? Do you have a team that deals with onboarding? Do you have visa specialists that work within the business? giving the control back to the candidate allows them to escalate issues to the right person, and it saves the recruiters time. How do you create content? Well, it's actually like super simple. In my last role, we created content for about £30 a month, and we were not digital or creative people. You can do it on a budget. We had a couple of monthly subscriptions, and I know we're quite tech agnostic here, but if anyone wants to know what they are, and Tasha's looking at me, don't say any names, then please ask me afterwards. But we created cartoon animations, video job adverts, infographics, newsletters, you name it. Our team motto was, we'll figure it out. And when someone needed something, that's exactly what we did. And it was fairly inexpensive. Caveat, if you have a brand team, I'm not encouraging you to go rogue. And I know there's some brand people in here today, but actually it's a really good opportunity to partner with your brand teams and be like, do you have imagery that we can use? You know, how much space do we need on one side of the logo? Please don't, you know, shout at us for it. But actually it's a really good opportunity to work with them and produce some really glossy material that can be sent out to candidates in process. Step 2, in terms of delivering a really good candidate experience, and there's been chat about this today, automation. Automate everything that you can. And I feel really strongly about this. I am an absolute champion of the candidate experience, but I also believe that automation is absolutely critical to delivering something great. It doesn't mean robotic, doesn't mean impersonal or cold. What you're doing is you're giving your recruiters the chance to have valuable conversations with candidates that make them feel good about the process. That's what it's all about. It's not about trying to take away from recruiters themselves. I want to do a quick show of hands, if that's okay. We have a CRM that we utilise to kind of talent pool and nurture communities. Does anyone here use a CRM? Awesome. Who uses an ATS to process their candidates from start to finish? Okay. And I know at least one person here does not have an ATS. Is there anyone else who's winging it on Excel or some other system? No? I'm not going to point out the person that doesn't, but that's fine. Okay, that's fine. How do you like your ATS? This is how I feel about mine, by the way. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, no one loves their ATS. Sorry if there's ATS providers here, right? There's always going to be something that you don't like about it. That is just the way it goes. I don't think there's any perfect ATS out there. I don't think there's any system out there. And I love a bit of technology and I love a bit of process. But what you need to do is embrace the technology you have when it comes to candidate experience. If you're thinking you're going to get a new piece of tech, you're probably not going to get it for at least 6 months. If you're lucky, you might get it in 18 months, maybe longer. So my advice is become the master of the technology that you have. So as I say, I love a bit of tech. I know not everyone's the same, but when I see something and I'm like, oh, I wish it did that, why doesn't it do that? My brain just immediately goes, well, I'm going to make it be able to do that, even if it means I have to put in a workaround. And ultimately, if you want to deliver a great candidate experience, that's critical. So become the master of the technology that you do have within the organisation while still pushing for something better. Load in your templates into your ATS if you're using one. If you've got an application acknowledgement, take that document that you created that says this is our process from start to finish and attach it to the application acknowledgement. Put in the interview feedback at every stage. If you can automate in terms of triggering comms, as soon as a candidate status change to first interview scheduled, attach the first interview document and send it out to them, and then they've got something to go for. This all is around making the candidate feel more informed and more in control. The other really important, I guess, factor in all of this, by creating documents and automating, is you level the playing field for your candidates. And from a DE&I perspective, this is so important. I've no doubt everyone here is an exceptional recruiter. You will always have exceptional recruiters who go the extra mile and really, really drive candidate experience, but not everyone does that. By putting in automated kind of certainties, you ensure that at least every candidate that gets to certain stages has the opportunity to do their best. So I do think that that's really critical. And certainly, we've done a big project on neurodiversity, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. By giving candidates more information up front, in particular, you're going to support neurodivergent people who are ultimately looking for more information and more clarity. This was my face when the recruitment team that I work with told me that 2 years ago they had spent 70 hours prepping 140 candidates for interview. It was like that because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how much time you spent. But it was also like that because I was like, oh my God, you cared so much about the candidates having a good experience that you did that. Absolutely phenomenal piece of work, great results from it, but was it actually an effective use of their time? I didn't think it was. So we sat down and we talked about how we were going to, improve it this year. So last year, we were going to do another big campaign. Now, in this instance, we actually recruit candidates from overseas, so we're dealing with relocators. Instead of them spending 70 hours doing 30-minute calls with every candidate, we did 3 sessions live. We took the first one with partners, the people who are actually going to be carrying out the interviews on location, and saying, this is what you can expect from meeting us. These are the things we want to see. These are the things that we want to hear about. The second one was with the recruiters. It was all transactional. These are the logistics of the interview. This is what you can expect. This is how you claim expenses back. The interviews are going to be back to back. This is how it's going to work on the day. And then the third one was with the people who'd relocated from the year before, and they were now working and living in the UK in our regional offices. And it was like just a free forum for the candidates to ask anything they wanted. One guy I remember saying was like, it gets really light here really early in the morning, and I was not expecting that. And these are things that people want to know, particularly if they're making a big move. So we implemented that, we recorded all the sessions, we sent it out to the candidates afterwards. They could rewatch it as many times as they wanted, and then the recruiters still had calls with them, but it was about answering questions that they had that were related to information that had already been conveyed to them, not the transactional stuff. And I know you want to know the success rate of it. It was very successful, but it leads on to step 3, which is review and refresh. Once you've implemented a strategy, it's really important that you're able to measure it. And I know obviously the panel were talking about measuring results as well. I was speaking to my boss even on Monday about it's really hard to measure candidate engagement or candidate experience, frustratingly so. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're kind of measuring a feeling, but you're trying to get it in a statistical form. With that particular recruitment campaign, our offer acceptance rate went from 52% to 88%. So we took probably 60 hours of work off the recruiters, we automated it, and the candidates had a better experience off the back of it. They accepted the offers, the partners were delighted, they can't wait to run it again this year, and ultimately that was us measuring the success of that project. But it is really important that you kind of review the things that you do on a regular basis. And we talk quite a lot about, do we look at the 3 months prior and then implement the strategy and look at the 3 months afterwards? And that is absolutely, definitely a good strategy, but check with the candidates in process as well. So I wouldn't run a strategy for 3 months and then measure at the end. You probably need to touch base with the candidates midway through just to see if things are actually working. And if not, just change it. We do stuff all the time that doesn't work, and it's like, well, it didn't work, but that's okay, we'll try something different the next time. For those of you who have ATSs, probably not going to be able to measure a lot in terms of kind of content that's going out to candidates. Are they opening it? Are they clicking it? If you've got a CRM, then absolutely, that's the absolute bread and butter of a system like that. You will be able to do it. What I would say is, if you've got an ATS that doesn't have analytics or you're winging it on Excel, you can do a lot with a few YouTube tutorials on Google Analytics. You can host the content that you're putting out for interview preparation online. You can put it on the cloud, the mythical cloud, and you can build in parameters that test that, basically test the number of people that go and visit the link and get it off Google Analytics. I'm not an expert in it, but I do know someone who's very well versed in it, so I'm happy to pass on details. We also do a lot of A/B testing at EY, so we predominantly do it in the sourcing side of things. So we do kind of in mails, what's working better, is one subject line better than another? But also we do it in content to people in process. So we trialled it as part of a project that we ran last year. How did video perform against audio? How did narrative perform against infographic, and every kind of iteration in between? And this all helps us kind of inform the strategy moving forward. And then the final step is step 4, which is evolve. I think a few people have said it today, no one is the finished article, no process is the finished article, no system is either. It's really important that you continue to evolve and actually be passionate about it. I'm lucky to have a job where I get excited to come to work every day and I feel like I can make a real impact. But as recruiters, it sounds cheesy, but we really are impacting people's lives, and passion is absolutely critical. If you want to drive a really good candidate engagement strategy, then it's definitely needed. If you've got a candidate who's in 2 processes and you have done absolutely everything you can to make their experience amazing, you'll be hard pushed to find one that doesn't say yes. So actually differentiating yourself in process, where you can make more of an impact than in pre-application, in my opinion, quickly, you actually might set yourself up for getting more candidates into the business that you really want. So just to kind of refresh, communicate certainties to your candidates, automate everything you can within reason, review and refresh and evolve. And when you think you're having a day and you're like, oh, why can't we do candidate experience? Please rest assured that despite the tech you've got, despite the systems, the processes, the people, you absolutely can deliver a great candidate experience. Thank you so much.